Yeah, welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of Format Podcast. Got a pretty interesting show for you here today. Gilbert Arenas back at it again, continuing to disrespect the greats of the past, but we'll get to that. But before we do, you already know what time it is. If you're here on YouTube and you haven't already, please go ahead, click that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell so you can be kept aware anytime new content comes up on the channel. If you want the audio only version of the podcast, please open up your audio podcast platform, click the search bar, type in the Format Podcast. We should come right up. If you're enjoying the content, please give us that like on YouTube and give us that 5-star review on your audio podcast platform. And please leave a comment both on YouTube and on your audio platform. All that stuff helps us rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. Now let's get right to it. Here we go. Gilbert Arenas at it again. Okay, so I want to say last week or maybe the week before, Dwight Howard made an appearance on Gilbert Arenas' podcast, the Gil's Arena, right? And he talked about his career, a lot of the things that he's done and things he's been through and, his life as an NBA player and all that, right? So I didn't even realize, by the way, till watching this, Dwight Howard played in the league for 19 years. Like, I knew he came in young. I didn't realize it had been that long, but I guess it makes sense. Probably came in, maybe 2 years after LeBron. But anyway, Dwight Howard has had a great career, probably will end up being a Hall of Famer at some point. But it came up later. The issue was Dwight Howard did not make NBA top 75, right? And that's a different story, whether or not he should have been a top 75 player. He probably could be based on what he has done in his time in the league. So I get that. I don't have any objection there. But in true Gilbert Arenas fashion, he and Dwight are talking about, Dwight not making the top 75. And Gilbert just came out and flat asked him. And I don't know if he's doing this for clicks or, whatever, or if he actually believes this stuff he's saying. But again, like I always say, guys who say certain things, they know their audience. And what do I mean by that? Gilbert asked Dwight Howard, "Are you better than Patrick Ewing?" And I'm like, wait, what? And Dwight Howard said, I love Patrick. That's my guy. And matter of fact, let's hear the clip, then we'll come back and talk about it.
Okay, top 75, right?
Yes.
I'm just going to ask it. We know who's in there, right? And I've always said, like, he's better than this player. And I'm going to say it. Mm-hmm. Your resume and what you did, are you better than Patrick Ewing?
Yes.
Okay. I mean,
And I love Pat. He was my coach.
I know he was your coach. I was there too.
Yeah, I love him. But there's no way, yes.
No way.
Not even close.
Not even close.
It's not even a close resume. Like, people think it's crazy, but when you look at the resume itself, the resume speaks for itself. If I take all big man's names off, right? If you take your name off all your accolades, so no one knows who's who, right? Mm-hmm. They will pick your stats thinking you're Patrick Ewing. Right, we're gonna this must be Patrick Ewing stats, 3-time block champ or 5-time rebounding champ and do all that. Like, and it's kind of weird that, we're biased to stats because of our emotional opinions, right? And I just, I know you can't take away the past because it's the past, so you got to grandfather it in. But, when you're talking about top 75, you really have to start, like, really dialing it in and stop being biased and just be fair.
Okay, so there you have it. So let's break it down a little bit. So obviously you heard Gilbert ask Dwight Howard straight up, are you better than Patrick Ewing? And you heard the other guys on Gil's Arena saying, there's no way that Patrick Ewing is better than Dwight Howard, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so how do we go at this? Dwight Howard had a heck of a career, right? He did. There's no way around that. I think 3 or 4-time defensive player of the year, multiple-time block shots leader, multiple-time rebounding champion, won championship late at the end of his career with the Los Angeles Lakers, the bubble championship. Obviously, by that time, he wasn't the guy. He was a role player, and, so be it. But the question comes up, was he better than Patrick Ewing? And you heard Dwight, I love Patrick. That's my guy. But yeah, I was better than him. And then you hear the other guys on the show saying, no way Patrick Ewing was better than Dwight Howard, blah, blah, blah. It's not even close. And I'm like, can we stop this? Can we stop this? The recency bias has to stop, okay? And again, clearly Gilbert knows who his audience is. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit, right? Patrick Ewing, obviously top 75 player, top 50 player, original Dream Teamer, top 10 center of all time. Dwight Howard probably is not a top 10 center of all time. If he is, he's closer towards the bottom, but that's another story for another day, okay? So is Patrick Ewing better than Dwight Howard? Let's go ahead and let's break this down a little bit. Now, Patrick Ewing's final 2 seasons, obviously, he was badly his abilities were badly minimized by injury. He was far from the same player that he was during his dominant heyday as a New York Knicks center. Now, Dwight Howard, all-time great player as well. So what I wanted to do in kind of evaluating this thing was I went to Basketball Reference, right? Because we all love stats. Now, granted, it's 2 different eras, and I'm going to talk about that shortly. But I went to Basketball Reference, and I pulled up Dwight Howard's 6-year prime, right? From 2006 to 2012. And he had a heck of a run. He averaged 20 points per game. He averaged 2.4 blocks per game. And 13.6 rebounds per game on 59% shooting. So credit due. That was a heck of a run for that 6-year stretch. And again, multiple time defensive player of the year, 3 or 4, I believe. And multiple time rebounding champ, I think 5-time rebounding champ. So great. Cool. Now let's juxtapose that with Patrick Ewing's 6-year prime stretch. 24.4 points a game. Okay. 10.5 rebounds per game, 3.1 blocks per game on 53% shooting. Cool. So Dwight Howard was not the better scorer during their 6-year primes, right? Took the sample size. He was not the better scorer. He was not the better shot blocker. He was the better rebounder. He had a higher field goal percentage. Cool. Now, let's talk about how and why that is a little bit. Now, if you watch this show, you know that I consistently make an analogy when it comes to measuring NBA players of this era versus NBA players of Michael Jordan, Patrick Ewing, Hakeem Olajuwon, that era, right? And that analogy is this. If you haven't heard it before, I'm going to give it to you now. If you've heard it, just, hang in there till I'm done. So let's say Bruce, me, hi, everybody. Let's say in the year 2000, I run a 100-meter dash, right? And I run it in 10 seconds flat. And at that time, that's the world record. Fastest 100 meters ever run. Got it. Fantastic. Okay. Now, let's just say John, random person. Hey, John. John comes along in 2010, and John runs a 9.5 flat. Blows my 100 meters out of the water. Wow, John is blazing fast. Oh, my gosh. Totally resets the world record. All that. Cool. But now when we look at it, John is half a second faster than me. However, when I ran my 100 meters, I ran it uphill. John ran it on a flat course. My degree of difficulty was greater than John's. So how much faster than me, if he is even faster, is John? That's the question. When you're looking at these things, you have to take into account errors. Is anyone going to debate that when Dwight Howard was in his physical prime and Patrick Ewing was in his physical prime, that the league was not much more physical in Patrick Ewing's physical prime? Is anyone going to debate me on that? Okay. Is anyone going to debate me on the fact that when Dwight Howard was in his physical prime and Patrick Ewing was in his physical prime, Patrick Ewing's prime was shooting many less threes, so the scoring was more on the interior and the paint was more packed? Is anyone going to debate me on that? Okay. Is anyone going to debate me that when Patrick Ewing was in his physical prime, there were much more true big men, centers, and power forwards in the league than in Dwight Howard's physical prime? Is anyone going to debate me on that? Okay. Now, is anyone going to debate me that Patrick Ewing played in a much more difficult era for centers than Dwight Howard played in? Is anyone going to debate me on that? Okay, so if you do want to debate me on that, I got you. Patrick Ewing entered the NBA in 1985. Robert Parrish was still winning championships, Hall of Fame. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was still winning championships, Hall of Fame. Bill Laimbeer was en route to winning championships, not Hall of Fame, but at the time, one of the better big men and extremely physical. Okay, Tree Rollins was still in the league, top 10 shot blocker. Mark Eaton was still in the league. Top 10 all-time shot blocker. Okay. Hakeem Olajuwon, drafted number 1 overall in 1984. Dominant low post scorer, dominant rebounder, dominant shot blocker. Got it. David Robinson enters the league in 1988. Dominant shot blocker, dominant rebounder, dominant post defender, Hall of Fame. Got it. Shaquille O'Neal enters the league in 1992. Dominant rebounder, dominant shot blocker, dominant low post scorer, dominant post defender. Got it. Alonzo Mourning, oh, by the way, Shaquille O'Neal, Hall of Fame. Alonzo Mourning enters the league 1992. Dominant rebounder, dominant shot blocker, dominant post defender, Hall of Fame big man. Got it. I believe 1993, Dikembe Mutombo enters the NBA. Either 1991 or 1993, excuse me. Dikembe Mutombo enters the NBA. Second all-time NBA shot blocker, so top 10 shot blocker. All-time dominant post defender. Got it. Hall of Fame. Got it. Multiple-time All-NBA defense. Got it. All these are guys that Patrick Ewing had to deal with night in and night out, and I'm not even mentioning the power forwards here. And we could do that, the Kevin McHale's, the Karl Malones, the Charles Barkley, et cetera, right? Much more physical era. Many more dominant bigs. Got it. Okay. Does Dwight Howard's center era even remotely compare to that? Shaq was on the way down when Dwight Howard was ascending, and even when Shaq was in Cleveland with LeBron before LeBron left Cleveland, you can look it up on YouTube. Shaq gave Dwight Howard the business, and that was an old Shaq. Okay? So where I'm going with this is Dwight Howard was dominant. I get it. In his era. But he didn't have to deal with what Patrick Ewing had to deal with. So I say it to say Patrick Ewing got busy in his era, which was a much tougher big man era, a much tougher defensive era, right? But he still got busy. I mean, where's the argument here? How can we sit here and try to say it's not even close between Dwight Howard and Patrick Ewing? If you're going to tell me the level of athleticism between Dwight Howard and Patrick Ewing is not even close, cool, I got you. Dwight Howard, way more athletic. Did he have a better offensive game? No. Did he have a better mid-range game? No. Did he have a better post game? No. Did he have more post moves? No. Like, what are we judging this on? Okay, he's got more defensive player of the year awards. Where was Patrick Ewing supposed to get these defensive player of the year awards when they were getting split between what? Among big men, Olajuwon. Oh, by the way, Michael Jordan's got one in there, but Olajuwon and Alonzo Mourning and David Robinson and these guys. How was Patrick Ewing supposed to get 4 defensive player of the year awards? You tell me. Oh, and Mutombo got the multiple defensive player of the year awards. All these guys are getting defensive first team. I don't think Patrick Ewing has even one defensive first team because of all the other guys that were doing work on the defensive side as bigs in his era. So where was he supposed to get this stuff from? So we can't look at it and say, well, Dwight Howard's got more accolades. Well, what does that mean? Dwight Howard didn't have much competition in getting them. Now, again, Dwight Howard, dominant rebounder, but he wasn't battling the same type of bigs on the boards for those rebounds, whether they're power forwards or centers. I mean, this is all common sense, people. Just go back and check. This is not difficult. It's really not. So I get so frustrated when Gilbert Arenas is out here and he's talking to people who don't know or won't check. This is not difficult stuff. It's really not. Dwight Howard, for his career, I think averages like 2.1 or 2.2 blocks per game. Patrick Ewing averages like 2.9. But again, going back to their 6-year peaks, in his 6-year peak, Patrick Ewing averaged 3 blocks a game, 3.1. Dwight Howard averaged 2.4. So you're a multiple-time block shots champion, and Dwight Howard has never averaged 3 blocks per game in his career. He hasn't. Now, in the interest of fairness, I will say this. By the time Dwight Howard really hit his peak, the league was heavily into the 3-ball era, and they were shooting many more threes than they were in Patrick Ewing's era. So that kind of takes away opportunities for blocks at the rim. But even that said, you look at guys like Hakeem Olajuwon, David Robinson. These were guys that could step out, guard the pick and roll, and still get back and defend the rim. Like, this is so if you're as athletic and as explosive as they say you are, Dwight Howard, you still should be able to get 3 blocks a game. You just should, because we've seen it happen. I mean, all those guys were better than you, but we've seen it happen. So at the end of the day, it's so frustrating to me. We could take the stats and we could compare them, and really the only thing he's got over Patrick Ewing and again, I'm looking at their peaks, is field goal percentage and total rebounds. Now, to the point of field goal percentage, why is that? Again, if you go look it up on Basketball Reference, so many of Dwight Howard's points came right there in the paint on dunks. If you look, he's dunking on people. He's catching ollies. Dwight Howard wasn't shooting the mid-range. He wasn't shooting fadeaways. He wasn't turning over each shoulder, right? He did not really have an offensive arsenal. Patrick Ewing had that. Dwight Howard didn't. So the fact that these guys can sit here, oh, it wasn't even close, like, come on, man. Y'all are being disingenuous. You got to tell people the truth. People can go back and look, but they don't want to because that would take a little bit of effort. That would take a little research, and it would destroy their preconceived notions and biases about what they want to believe. So the fact is this: Patrick Ewing had a better offensive game. Patrick Ewing had just as good, if not a better defensive game by virtue of having to go against much better bigs for the just about the majority, if not the entirety of his career, right? So better offensive game, better defensive game, right? Better shot blocker, right? Better scorer, even though his last 2 years he didn't even average double figures. So better scorer, better offensive game, better defensive game. Patrick Ewing's got all that, right? Well, where are we? Where are we? Come on, man. What are we doing? Patrick Ewing deserves to be a top 75 player. Now, if you want to say based on Dwight Howard's accolades for his career that he deserved to be a top 75 player as well, I'll give you that. But for him to sit there and say, well, no, correction. I expect him to say he's better than Patrick Ewing. I expect him to say that because as a competitor, you don't believe anyone's better than you. However, for all these guys on the show to say, oh, it's not even close and you better, no. You guys say, hey, Dwight, man, we love you. You know, you were great in your time, but let's look at this thing. I think Patrick got you, you know, because I can tell you as athletic and as strong as Dwight Howard was, I think it'd be a totally different ball game if he had to go up against D-Rob and Shaq and Zoe and Mount Mutombo and Kareem and Mark Eaton and Olajuwon and all these guys night in, night out, and Patrick Ewing in his prime, night in, night out. You're not doing what you did today back then. You're just not. All right, so what I want to know from you, what do you think about my breakdown on why Dwight Howard is not better than Patrick Ewing? And do you believe Dwight Howard is better than Patrick Ewing? And what do you think of Gilbert Arenas, again, saying all this stuff? Just, you know, yeah. So leave your comments in the comment section. Look forward to hearing them. I'll get back to you on the next episode, and I'm out. Peace.